Welcome to Crimson Guitars and welcome to a Mini-torial. One of our Patreon supporters asked me how I would sharpen I lost it in the tidying up process, a Forstner bit. Now, machines are not required. And I figured, what the hell, I've answered him, and I'm going to show you as well. In fact, I'm having deja vu. I think I might well have done this before. Quick tip, don't throw Forstner bits around. They actually have sharp bits, even if they're not sharp. So, there are two different methods that essentially use the same, one method using two different tools, slightly. My favorite tools to do this are diamond, sort of credit card sized diamond files. These are, I use the Sorbys because they're just really solid, good quality tools. So I've got a 600 grit and a 1000 grit Sorby diamond credit card. And there's also something they call a diamond sharpening file. And this is on a little toothbrush size handle. And this is, I think, the 60 micron. I wish it put it in grit as well, so I would know, but it's particularly fine. And this gets into all those awkward bits, places and things. There is another option, and that option is a good quality, sorry, I should have had this on my workbench, a good quality file. So this is a Barco file, single cut, particularly fine, fret end dressing file actually. And those get into most places. And obviously the smaller the needle file, smaller needle files if required. I tend to use the biggest tool that I can in order to get the job done as evenly and with more stability than if you've got a small needle file, for example. It could do the job, but can also dig in and cause issues, and we don't like that. So I'm going to do part of this with the diamond credit cards, and I'm going to do part of it with a couple of files, and we'll go through there. And the process itself, once you know what to use, the process is actually really easy. So we have a vise. Now there are different parts of this drill, and as you can see, this one is so blunt that it's just dirty and nasty. And I'm not going to clean it beforehand so that you can see where I've sharpened. You have the point. You don't want to change the geometry of this if you can help it. So we've got the point that could do with a little bit of a touch-up. You've got this face here, which is nice and flat. There's a little tooth type thing here. You've got the outside, which has to be nice and smooth. And most importantly, because this is the cutting edge, you've got a section here that has to be flattened as well. And if we start with a file, you can see why I like big files. It does the whole thing to a certain extent. You can hold it pretty flat, and it wants to stay flat. Whereas a smaller file, while it may be finer, sort of rocks. In fact, that one's so thin it bends. So maybe that's not a good example of what to do. Okay, now I just feel a little bit less stable with this. One of the other things you need to bear in mind is if you take too much off this side, if you take more off one side than the other, you're altering the geometry, and that side will be cutting, no, that side will be cutting because you've taken more off this side if you're hitting at 90 degrees. and an uneven cut is not good. In this case, this has been poorly sharpened at some point. So I've got a low spot there. And essentially, I'm trying to keep as stable as I possibly can. And end up with a nice flat face. Now, the definition of sharp is two polished faces meeting at a point. And we don't have to be razor sharp like a chisel or something at this point, but the finish that I'm getting off this file isn't really good enough. Not for what I want. And in fact, I don't think this Forstner bit is particularly well hardened, etc. So what I'm going to end up doing is I will finish that with the credit card. Now, that was my 1000 grit. Let's pull the 600 grit out. Now this is lubricated with water. Just helps keep the diamond good. I've put that on the wrong place. There we go. Now the reason I like the diamonds, as well as the final finish, is I've got more control. I'm holding this in my hand, and I've got 4 fingers touching the card. It is also multi-directional. So I can take that, let me add a little bit of water, and by hand, and with some rapidity, I can sharpen the faces on this Forstner bit. Yes, this desperately needs to be done. You get the idea then. It just takes a little bit of hand-eye coordination, a little bit of stability, and it's actually relatively straightforward and easy to do. Now, I'm gonna do the outside edge as well. And one other thing, actually, with diamond files, you don't want to leave them wet, okay? That, if you cause it to rust, it's a world of hurt. These are pretty much my favorite quick and easy and cheap. They're like, what, 11 quid, 12 quid? Pretty much my favorite down and dirty, quick, oh my gosh, I've got to sharpen this thing. So-and-so is going to die if I don't sharpen my chisel soon or something tool. I absolutely love it. Anyway, so a little bit of water. And clean up the edge. Now there are other things that could be causing your issues with your Forstner bits. One of them is resin buildup. I tend to use acetone well, I tend to use acetone. It's called naphtha, I think. In the US of A. But there we go. What I've sort of come to the conclusion while doing this is you need a file to start if it's a particularly bad tool. Start with a fine file, a good quality tool, and then move on to the diamond. And I've only hit that with 600. The 1000 grit is more than enough for sharpening a Forstner bit. So, well, I'm going to finish my job now, but this is a Mini-torial. You know what to do. It's very simple and straightforward. If you don't have a diamond credit card or two, please go and get one. This little tool is also good for getting into the little spaces. It has use. It has a handle. But anyway, little diamond micro dots. Super cool. I've got some sharpening to do. See you soon. Click like and subscribe and all that goodness, yeah? Cheerio.